Greetings. Thank you all for joining us for this special SNAP webinar. We appreciate your interest in the 2025 SNAP Request for Proposals. I'm Jensen Reitz-Montambo. I'm the Director of Science, Funding, and Partnerships for the Nature Conservancy. As part of my portfolio, I've directed the Science for Nature and People Partnership, SNAP, for these 8 years. I'm calling in here from the Eastern Time Zone of the United States. As a reminder, the call for SNAP concept notes is currently open until January 6th. Concept notes are open to anyone in the world, any country or organization. You must submit a concept note to be invited to submit full proposal this year. But first, allow me to turn to our panelists so that they may introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Garrett Herndon. I am the Science Funding Manager for Global Science at the Nature Conservancy, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. on the East Coast of the United States. I have been in my role for about 3 years. And in my role with the Nature Conservancy, I also serve as the Program Manager for the Science for Nature and People Partnership, working with Jensen and Kate closely. In this capacity, I lead on administering our annual call for proposals, including creating materials, managing the online portal, leading the review process, and ultimately setting up and managing grant agreements with our awarded working groups. And now I'll turn it over to Kate Mastro.
Thank you, Garrett. I'm Kate Mastro. I'm a Senior Program Manager for the Wildlife Conservation Society, known as WCS, and I'm based at WCS's headquarters in the Bronx Zoo in New York, Eastern Time Zone. And I represent WCS on the SNAP management team, working closely with Garrett and Jensen. And I've been lucky enough to be in this role on the SNAP management team for about 7 years. And with the RFP, I organized WCS's internal review process, working with our teams to polish and revise their concepts and applications. And then once funded, working closely with our teams to help in any way administratively with their projects.
Fantastic. And thank you both, Kate and Garrett, for your time coming with us today and also for your dedication to the SNAP program. Now, Garrett, in your role as the Science Funding Manager at the Nature Conservancy, TNC, I understand this is the fourth SNAP RFP that you have supervised. Tell us a little more about that process. What should a prospective applicant do to apply? What does the timeline look like from application to acceptance?
Sure thing, Jensen. That's a great question. I will go ahead and share my screen for you all again so you can get a sense of where to go to apply for SNAP funding. All application materials for our call for proposals are hosted on our awards portal. You can reach this at awards.snappartnership.net. It's also important to note that only concept notes and full proposals received through this online awards portal will receive feedback. So for this cycle, concept notes, they will be required or are currently required and must be approved before applicants will be invited to submit a full proposal. We're currently accepting concept notes for our ongoing call for new working groups from now until January 6th, 2026. To create a concept note in the online portal, fairly simple process. First, you will need to log in. If you do not already have an account, you can register for one fairly easily. It just requires a name, email, and password to set up. Once logged in, you can select Concept Note from the drop-down menu under the My Programs heading on the dashboard page and click Create. And this will take you to the brief form where you can complete the required questions, access templates for your working group membership and budget, and add the necessary attachments and then ultimately submit the form. You are able to save your progress throughout the drafting phase. So if you need to pause and come back later, that is totally fine. But please do remember to submit your concept note with all attachments completed as final before the deadline, which again will be 11:59 p.m. Hawaii time on the 6th of January, 2026. In terms of timeline for applying to SNAP for this cycle, SNAP is now requiring concept notes as mentioned. These need to be approved prior to being invited to submit a full proposal. Concept notes are being accepted from now again to the 6th of January. After which time our management team will review all submissions for alignment with SNAP's mission and the scope of funding for our program. Ultimately, only notes deemed within scope will receive a brief amount of feedback and be invited to submit a full proposal. The invited proposal stage will begin February 17th and be open until the 6th of April, 2026. After the full proposal submission window closes, SNAP science reviewers will assess each proposal and make recommendations for proposals to advance to our board of directors. The SNAP board will meet in May or June of 2026 with ultimately 4 to 6 working groups selected to be awarded funding. Applicants will be notified shortly thereafter, and once notified, around July of 2026, we will begin the process of drafting and executing a grant agreement between the Nature Conservancy and the PI institution best situated to administer and report on the funding over the course of the grant term. Benson, back to you.
All right. Very much appreciate that overview, Garrett. Thank you. And now, Kate, if I could turn to you. I understand that you've held a leadership role in the SNAP program as the representative from the Wildlife Conservation Society, WCS, for more than 7 years. I was hoping you could share some wisdom with us on what makes a good SNAP concept, or what, as they say, makes a project snappable.
Excellent question. And as Garrett just mentioned, obviously concepts that are in line with SNAP's mission, values, but a strong SNAP concept is one that brings together important questions that are timely and relevant, a strong group of people, and pathways for impact. So we think snappable projects are inherently interdisciplinary. They involve multiple institutions and partners from diverse organizations spanning conservation, development, sustainability, also that the science is grounded in real-world needs. SNAP concept should also focus on synthesis, so drawing together existing data and knowledge rather than generating new primary research. And it's this synthetic science that's driving conservation action that would not otherwise happen. It's also important for concepts to clearly articulate how findings will move into action through practical implementation pathways. And one way to make sure that the pathways are clear is to involve potential end users, stakeholders, decision makers in the working group membership. So they're already integral parts of the development of the proposed SNAP tools, and there's already buy-in from those audiences. And also, importantly, SNAP concepts can be snappable, even if they're part of a larger scientific or conservation effort, as long as that synthesis component and the science to action potential are front and center.
Excellent. Thank you for that overview, Kate. And now, Garrett, I'm hoping that you can tell us a little bit more about why folks should apply to SNAP. What does SNAP fund? What can SNAP not fund? And maybe what is the size of the average award?
I'd be happy to, Jensen. In terms of who should apply to SNAP, well, really at the core of our program is bringing together disparate points of view in a collaborative environment, centered around resolving issues at the nexus of people and nature. We do synthesis of existing data sets to solve novel research questions. That's really the impetus of the Science for Nature and People partnership. And to do this, we disperse funding really to 4 categories overall. Research fellows are really the heart and soul of SNAP working groups. We do ask that all proposals include funding for a full-time research fellow to engage on their project. They really become the people who take ownership of the effort and take it out the door upon completion. Research fellows can be postdoctoral researchers, graduate students, in some cases, folks pursuing a master's degree or a doctorate. Really, we're open to multiple configurations depending on the needs and the specific context of your project. It's also important to note here, one thing that we do maintain for all of our grants and sub-grants is a 0% indirect cost rate. So this would apply to a research fellow, it would apply to any other agreements under the SNAP grant agreement. And for more information on that, you can review our indirect cost policy, which is linked on our awards portal. The second tranche of funding that SNAP offers is really at the core, apart from the research fellow, of the SNAP process, and these are virtual and in-person meetings. We provide funding for travel for working group meeting participants, neutral third-party facilitators, meeting planning, hotels, catering, the venue, the AV, everything you need to get folks into the room to collaborate over the course of generally 3 to 5 days in a retreat-like setting. Third is really funding focused on the compilation of outputs. These can be specialized research support, independent contractors who are doing discrete analysis on the project, graphic design, web page development, a number of different activities which really are focused on getting the outputs of the working group in a format where they can be put into the hands of implementers to affect change in how conservation and development are done. And then last but not least, SNAPP does offer funding, a modest amount of funding for direct administrative support. This has to be activities that are associated with administering the grant funding through SNAPP. It can be logistical arrangements, reporting, finance, contracts, things of that nature. This can be calculated and should be calculated as about 5 to 10% of your overall core working group budget. Again, a modest amount of funding for that. But we do recognize that some administrative tasks are associated with convening a SNAPP working group, and those are attributable costs to our program. In terms of what we cannot fund or do not fund, SNAPP does not, SNAPP does not provide funding for the salary of principal investigators or those folks who are leading the project. We find that the most competitive SNAPP proposals are projects where the focus of the work is really key to solving a problem that's essential to the day job of our principal investigators and related to the organizational and institutional priorities of their organizations, the organizations that they're representing. We do not fund primary data collection or field work. Again, SNAPP is focused on the synthesis of existing data sets and does not provide funding to send people out into the field to collect data. We also do not provide funding for fixed assets or infrastructure development, any construction costs, building research centers, digging wells, anything of that nature is not something that we are able to fund, unfortunately. As well as lobbying. We stay away from lobbying as a program. The last two, research without a direct link to implementation or vice versa. It is very key to SNAPP that we are funding projects where synthesis comes together to create change in how conservation is done in the field, creating resources for implementers to take out the door and affect how they are doing conservation activities. So they need to have both aspects included in proposals for them to be competitive. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, SNAPP does not provide funding for overhead or indirect costs. We do maintain a 0% indirect cost rate for all of the grants and awarded funding that we manage as a program. Moving on to average award. Over the past 3 cycles, we've seen an average award amount of about $233,000. This is to support a working group over 18 to 24-month project. Again, SNAPP provides up to $1 million of funding that is spread over 4 to 6 working groups, which operate for about 18 to 24 months. That being said, we do encourage applicants and find that the most competitive proposals do provide a budget justification that thinks critically about the amount of funding that they will need to support the activities that they do have planned. So look at these as guidelines and in no way a rule. We want you to submit a budget that is detailed and accurate to what you think you will need to accomplish the stated aims of the project.
All right, that's a really great overview. Thank you, Garrett. And now as we start to wind down our webinar, Kate, I know that in your day job, you have a very comprehensive amount of experience working with partnerships. And I was hoping you could give some tips to our viewers about what a partnership looks like in the form of a proposal here. Is it required to have a collaborator from both TNC and WCS? And what should prospective applicants do if they want to find such a collaborator?
Thank you, Jensen. Partnerships are obviously key to SNAPP. We do require that SNAPP working groups have PIs from at least 2 separate organizations. And it is highly recommended that collaborators from TNC and WCS are members of the working groups. If you are looking to find collaborators from WCS and TNC, we suggest looking at the SNAPP website, look through the relevant working groups. Also, you can look at the websites for TNC and WCS, look at publications to find collaborators from WCS and TNC that have the relevant expertise and skill set that your working group will need. You can also then write to the SNAPP Secretariat inbox if you need help making connections.
Perfect. Thanks to you, Kate. And as we move into closing, just do either of you, Garrett, Kate, have any last minute words of wisdom based on your experience for folks who are applying to this SNAP Working Group Concept Notes cycle? Garrett.
I would say that one thing I always find inspiring about the SNAP working groups that I've worked with in the past are the synchronicities and the connections that come up throughout the project. We recognize that the membership of a working group might evolve over time as you are broached with questions where you recognize you need additional expertise in the room. We've had groups meet for the first time and then say, "Oh no, we need an economist. Oh no, we need an anthropologist. We have to reach out to someone additional." But I just find that these are just tremendous opportunities to build those connections and potentially create something that'll live on past SNAP funding. One brief anecdote that I really think sums up SNAP in many ways is from one of our previous groups where they had convened a number of government stakeholders in a room who had not collaborated for the first time across a region. And while one of them was working on their laptop, they looked across and saw exactly the data set that they needed to answer a question that was really key to moving the SNAP project forward and moving forward conservation within their specific country context. So it's these types of synchronicities and serendipitous moments that I think make SNAP really special and make these in-person convenings really vital to advancing conservation. So I will just say that. And Kate?
That
Oh,
sounds special indeed.
that sounds amazing. Yeah, and kind of building off of that, several colleagues have shared that SNAP really does help create conditions to organize, as Garrett's saying, these cross-sector consultations and meetings that wouldn't happen otherwise. So SNAP breaks down silos. It provides the opportunity for face-to-face meetings where trust can be built and lays the groundwork then for continued future collaborations. And one of a WCS PI shared that working group members are no longer outsiders. They then see themselves as collaborators and colleagues for the duration of the SNAP project and then hopefully for many, many years to come.
Oh, that's fantastic. Very inspiring. And I hope this has inspired you all to want to apply for a SNAP working group. As a reminder, concept notes must be submitted through the awards portal by January 6, 2026. And also, this is an annual award, so if your idea or your collaboration needs a little more time to develop, that's okay. You can look forward to the next RFP later in the year of 2026. Thank you all for joining us.